Hello, world in free time. Hopefully I'm not annoying anybody, and hopefully my words can be useful and constructive to somebody. I felt like making a quick video about occultism, and I've mentioned it a few other times in some of my videos and discussions. Sorry for smoking. I don't support any type of drug or alcohol use, but I try, if a person does choose to partake, I hope that they can, handle themselves and do it as safely and responsibly, and not to hurt children or anything like that. So occultism is nothing new. And I want to give two shout outs. One of them is completely unrelated, and it's just out of the love of my heart, and that is to Drew Carey. And the reason I do this is because I love watching The Price is Right. I used to love watching Whose Line Is It Anyway? And when I watch Drew Carey on Price is Right, to me, he's such a kind-hearted, nice, caring guy, and even sometimes when I see him do his best to support people and be there for people and be a nice guy, I still see him kind of like get not stepped on, but like it's happened to me a million times. It happens to everybody. It's when you try to do something nice, and no one really acknowledges you. And so I just want to shout out Drew Carey. I think you're one of the coolest guys. I think you every time I watch Price is Right, you inspire me to be a better person and be a tolerant person. So I hope that your life is good and happy, and whatever you're looking for, if you are, that you have found it or find it, and that you have peace. And I also have to give a huge shout out to one of my biggest inspirations and role models, and that's Dr. Phil. I love Dr. Phil. I love his show. I love his mentality. Obviously, any two people who are gonna be in the role of a peacekeeper or a negotiator, there's gonna be disagreements at times, but 9 times out of 10, I'm not only entertained, I learn things. His show and his MO, I love it so much. And he's dead on with so much stuff. And I see some people use him as a pedestal or as a means to his show to just kind of get a spotlight, and that bothers me because I know his intentions is to really solve people's problems. And so I hope the best for him. I would love to sit and talk with or work with him, or our show would be called "Is It Really Your Problem?" or something like that. So and he just had a show about occultism, and occultism is so interesting. And please excuse me for smoking and spitting. Occultism is so interesting because it really is. It's nothing that confusing. The only reason it's confusing is really because the spirit of the Antichrist is mixed up with it. So I really try to separate the spirit of the Antichrist and the devil itself, because the spirit of the Antichrist to me is like, man, is the same concept that the devil used to get himself banished from heaven, which is thinking that you could be equal to God, or you could rise up to God, or you could have the knowledge of good and evil, or it's the idea that you're equal to God, or you are God. And so right off the bat, if you're not a Christian, I submit to you the idea of when you die, do you really want to go to the bad side? Because don't lie to your, I mean, one person's heaven could be a Macy's store with every item in it ever for free and unlimited food. Another person's heaven could be, you know, flying a helicopter and fighting their enemies day in and day out. But see, I see heaven is that much more of an imaginative. Not everyone has the, but to me, hell is miserable for any person. Even if you're obsessed with satanic heavy metal and worship and even if you're obsessed with the occultism, because in some ways, I really not obsessed with it, but it has an interest, not in a good way, in an understanding way, and it even if you're like the most like 666 pentagram type of like slit, you know, whatever it is, even that lifestyle is not hell. That is actually just to a shock value, you know, violent. Just like there's pros and cons. I'm not attacking, you know, the witches or the Satanists. I'm not, because I appreciate a lot of different cultures and religions. I'm without a doubt a Christian, a follower of the Son of God and the blood of Jesus Christ. But I'm not gonna you know, single out a group until this group maybe attacks me. Then I might have to expose something about this whatever, you know, in order to shine light on a situation. But hell, so if you're not a Christian, I propose to you the idea, you know, the knock on the door, the search for God, that's what brought me to it. I was 17, I was 17 years old, and I realized that I was living a crazy lifestyle and I might die young. And if I died young, I wanted to go to the good. I didn't want to go to the crap. I didn't want to be on the losing team if I died. Because that's really, it's not, it doesn't matter how you see things on earth. Until you experience a separation from God in a way that is similar to hell or the lake of fire. It's not, from my life and my understanding, it's not. I mean, like, I lived around from what I could tell, some heavy duty satanic stuff, and it was annoying, and it was confusing and like mentally inducingly ill at times, but I wasn't like physically, it isn't the same as like that is even a good thing for some people. So it's not, even, and if my memory is correct, one or two of those people that I used to live around became Christians because they eventually learned that the devil was their introduction to God, and they had to learn that they had sin, and that the sin, that actually God was better than the devil they had experienced, and that they needed the blood of Christ, which God, you know, Jesus wandered in the wilderness being tempted by the devil for 40 days and 40 nights. And there must have been some pretty wild stuff that happened in the wilderness, which is so funny with so much witchcraft and occultism is in the forest and in the wilderness. And so it's like, who knows what the devil may have done in the wilderness? He could have, you know, temporarily, certain animals can get pretty wicked, like dogs and wolves, and maybe, I don't know about wolves, but I've seen some dogs that get pretty not friendly looking. And you know, he could have made things float. He could have been flying around, making himself visible. I do believe that God has allowed him a certain amount of power on earth for the pure testimony to magnify God's power. It's like a 22 compared to a fully automatic 30 cal. There's just no comparison. And in the end, the 22 could never even, it would be disassembled and unfiring if it even turned towards its creator. So, which already happened. So the war is won, and the don't get caught up in the battles. Don't worship the battles, and don't allow it which goes back to occultism. And Dr. Phil had just done an episode on this, and it was so textbook occultism. Okay, so the 10 Commandments: thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not murder. We know, and if you read the Bible, it describes what infuriates, what bothers God, and what and taking of innocent life and is one thing, and other things is adding to his words or testing him, and or worshiping I'm sure worshiping idols or having other gods, serving other gods, be it the devil or whatever. And because that was the devil's original plan. I mean, it's cut and paste if you look at it. His plan was to be God, to rise up against God. On earth, his whole get down is worship me, I'm God. And he uses his little itty bitty power to, get people jobs, places, and make people crash or whatever if they're praying to the devil. Because if you're praying to God, he's going to protect you. And one thing that I've learned in my life, and this is a shout out for the people who are listening, it is, if you follow God and you trust God in Christ, you don't have to fear for your life until you experiment with someone else's death. And it's not the same as defending yourself or some traumatic event or something like that. But like, for example, if you're on the freeway and you're bored and you start waving around at other cars and doing stupid speeding stuff, that is at the point where I could see God saying, okay, your life is here possibly to be taken, because you're carelessly experimenting with innocent people. You're not fighting, a battle, a warrior's battle or something like that. You're just straight being negligent of other people's life, at which point I feel God hands your life over to the Reaper, or whatever it is, to death. It's not, Reaper would just be the spirit of death, God coming, so, and that's why, so you don't have to live in that, like, you don't have, you can feel yourself play with it, and it's not the same as being strong or being wise or agile or accurate or anything like that. It's anyone from a man, child, or woman can do it, and it's playing God. It's the spirit of the Antichrist. It's thinking that you have the power of life and death in your hands, or the knowledge of life and death, whatever you want to call it. So occultism, it was just on the Dr. Phil show, and this, if the main idea of this is, do not fear occultism and do not practice it. It's in the Bible. It's very clearly shot down, and when it's mentioned in the New Testament, I agree with it. And it almost always follows a similar fashion. There's usually some type of demonic worship or communication, and that's a mental choice, is to try to listen and to be in touch with familiar spirits rather than be in touch with yourself and your own heart and your own mind, and seek God and seek this and pray for the Holy Spirit and so forth. And so and it's usually a group of at least 2 or 3 or 4 more. And there's usually one person who's either claiming to be infinitely innocent, like they are Jesus, and still willingly going along with the witchcraft and the satanic worship and the maybe the murder or the theft or the whatever the whatever else is going on, maybe rape, or maybe orgies or whatever. And I'm not shooting down, everyone has their freaky times and everyone experiments sexually. It's not like just because you had an orgy you're satanic. No, I'm saying like a dedicated to witchcraft and occultism orgy would probably bother God. And so don't fear it. And second off, don't participate in it. It's going to become entertaining to you. You can follow it. See, I love murder shows and I love mystery shows. And not because I want to murder, or not because I want to. It's just always been the fear of death has always, ever since I had a couple traumatic experiences, the fear of death has always been very like entertaining, not in a putting other people in danger way, just like researching scary things or like watching scary movies. And it brings a closeness to God, because you can either choose to embrace it and be evil, or you can seek God and realize it. But that doesn't mean go tightrope over a mountain and fall, and none of that. Don't test God. That's like the freeway activity. You can test God too. You can go out and be really, really ding dong and get your muerte pretty quick, and you can go find what you're looking for, and so don't, and the cool, and so or one person claiming to be God. There's always usually witchcraft and satanic worship, and that's no attack at that culture, because I've seen people practice that culture peacefully in their own house, and it is annoying at times, but it might be just annoying as someone who plays loud Christian music to other people. And I hope that those people can come to Christ and understand that if it wasn't for God and Christ, that wouldn't even exist. But that's for them. I'd rather go to the source. I don't need the middleman to hustle me and sell me out, and in the end not even get me the main deal. So it's not. And luckily for me, the only time I ever was introduced to it, I was already very, very, very estranged to it. And it was just like, to me, it was like, oh, okay. Like, I finally, people really do this or whatever. But to, prey on innocent people is not that, and that does, especially with children. And that's why you see some of these families where on these shows where one of the parents is a straight lunatic, and they end up, the kids murdering each other or murdering their parents, or parents murdering their kids, or they're sexually abused and raped and stowed away and taken out, and it's disgusting and terribly sad. And it's always based usually around some antichrist spirit of thinking you are God, or you're in the place of God, or witchcraft and Satanism with one person constant. It's playing the Jesus. But see, we aren't Jesus. We can't play Jesus. And no matter if Jesus works through you or uses you, don't ever think that you are worthy of him, or you are his re-embodiment. That's the spirit of the Antichrist, word for word. And a lot of times you see that person get murdered, and you can usually see it. There's some of these shows and some of these mysteries where it's just like straight up like something happened, and depending on what type of values these people had, someone went. It's not the same as like, it'll all of a sudden be this one episode. There's a group of friends who did drugs and hung out and drove across this part and and right off the bat you're like, oh, occultism. Someone's gonna get murdered. And the one on the Dr. Phil show was this lady who claimed to be God. Okay, spirit of the Antichrist, and she had all these followers who I really don't even think believed her. I think the men were there. The correct term, the street term would be gangbanging, sexually with her or with the other women, because the videos that I saw, it looked like there was a anticipated sexual ladder that was going to happen. And I'm not pointing the finger at those men or women, but the good thing about what I witnessed was that it was occultism that didn't appear to attack innocent life. It looked like it was willing, and that it was there. Now, I don't fear that, and I don't participate. I don't believe she's God. I love those people, and I understood what she was going through, but to her, she appeared to choose to take it that far. Not only did she have maybe received some gift of prophecy or insight, wisdom, or discernment, but she took advantage of it, turned it into false prophecy, turned it into being a vessel to evil spirits, and it started occultism. And if you're Christian, you could go right to Corinthians and read 1 Corinthians. It's going to settle it for you. And there's also scriptures about false prophets and just anything about the Antichrist. Now the only time you need to fear it is not to fear it, but if you're involved in this type of activity where like a group of people are willingly preying on one person, or to the point where it's like your conscience is triggering you. Gangsters don't, I mean, a real gangster to me, or a real warrior to me, doesn't, or however you want to put it, soldier, in any of those words in a positive form, it isn't someone who finds an easy fight. It's a person who walks away from an easy fight with words and steps up to a brave, to to something, steps up to their fears. And so if you're in a situation like that, you need to step out of it. You need to get out of it, because I've been in some situations where it's like my choices were questionable getting me there, and it gets pretty spooky. For example, one night I was sleeping under a bridge in Redding, California, and I had already had my glasses impounded in my car, and I had followed someone on the promise of getting money or free weed to come back, and I was legally blind. I had no glasses. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have taken that risk, and I shouldn't have gone out on that with that person. But I chose to, on the hope of an adventure, which is very dangerous, and I don't recommend it. Plan adventures, expect risks, and plan adventures, avoid risks. Plan adventures, avoid risks. I need to get that tattooed on myself. And I ended up under a bridge 2 or 3 days later after almost falling into a dam because I had no glasses. And these people had tried to give me reading glasses, and they thought I was lying to them. And they didn't understand how God bless them. They didn't understand how prescriptions work, and they assumed that I was trying to lie to them or act like I was better than them. But the truth is, I'm nearsighted like a mother effer, and reading glasses are completely useless for me. And so I ended up sleeping under a bridge with a bum. It doesn't sound that freaky, but for a young person it was, who had a knife, and the essence of it was pretty like the people. Now, it could have just been a lesson for me to be aware of those type of situations and how to steer clear of them next time I come across them. But looking back, the type of people that I chose to follow and listen to get to that situation, it was similar to occultism, and it ended in similar results. And that's probably why I got away from it in the end of it all scotch-free, because I didn't. It was like almost more of not an adventure. It was more of like a walk on the learning side. But it wasn't like, thank God I didn't get murdered, or thank God I didn't get in some serious trouble or something. If I would have been more the type of person to like, hey, yeah, let's go do some action, or let's go do some serious drug deals, or use some serious drugs. It destroys too much of my mentality. And so that being said, I mean, from there on out, anytime you kind of push away the Spirit of Christ and invite the spirit of like sin and worship of man and false prophecy, I mean, like, what else ensues? Rape, murder, lying, so all I hope is to all the Christians out there that don't fear it, and don't, just make sure you avoid it, make sure you're not participating in it, and just realize, I mean, you can usually see it from a mile away. You can, and it can probably help with a lot of people that have been murdered, because it usually goes hand in hand. So If you feel like there's someone in your life that, reminds you of God, or you feel like God uses them, or blah, 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 just hope the best for that person. It maybe tell them how you feel, but everyone has the chance to have the Spirit of God if you're a living person in your mind and in your heart. And it's not always like happy-go-lucky smiles and flowers. Sometimes it's, being alone, or sometimes it's being angry, but we try our best to control ourselves. And but whatever the case, follow God. Seek God, and for me, seek Jesus Christ. And that is in hand God. But never to think that one man like the Pope or an occultist leader could be God on earth. That's the exact spirit of the Antichrist.